So React Query or Tanstack Query is a powerful asynchronous state management for TypeScript and JavaScript apps. What that basically means is that this is a data fetching library and it helps us to fetch our data, manipulate our data, and it comes right out of the box with features like caching, refetching, pagination, and so much more. So let's go on and see how we can use React Query to fetch and manipulate data in a React.js applications efficiently. So I've opened VS Code over here. I'm gonna quickly go to the terminal and initialize a new React app. So I'm gonna say npm create wheat at latest. And it's gonna ask our project name, and we are already inside of this React Query tutorial folder. So I'm gonna press dot to create a folder over here. I'm gonna select React and JavaScript, and it has quickly initialized a new React app for us over here. Let's go on and install all of the dependencies by typing npm install. Okay, we have successfully installed the dependencies. Let's run npm run dev so that we can see our app running. And there we go, our app has successfully started. What I'm gonna first do, I'm gonna clear up everything that we don't need. First of all, delete this assets folder. Inside of app.jsx, I'm gonna clean it up. Just gonna remove everything over here. Just have a div which says subscribe to roadside coder, which you should if you haven't yet. And I'm gonna clear all the styles inside of index.css and app.css. Great, let's run it again, and awesome, we can see subscribe to roadside coder over here. Now how do we go on and install React Query? Let's go on and read the docs. Inside of the installation, okay, npm install at Tanstack Query /React Query. Okay, I'm gonna open a new terminal and paste this command over here. Okay, so this has finished installing, and I'm gonna install one more package over here, npm installed JSON server. So what is this? So to test React Query, we're gonna need some APIs as well, right? So if I go onto Google and search JSON server, and we have this npm package over here. So what this basically helps us do is it helps us create some mock APIs from our JSON data. So what I'm simply going to do, let me just close this up. I'm gonna create a folder over here called API, and instead of it, I'm gonna create a new file called data.json. And here I'm gonna paste my JSON data, which contains two things. First is this posts array with all of these objects inside of it, and the other thing that it contains is this tags array, so that it creates two APIs for us, and I'll show you how it does that. And if you want this data as well, you can click the link in the description down below and go to my GitHub repository and copy this data from there. So let me show you. All we have to do, we have to type npx json-server, and we have to locate this data.json file. So this is inside of src/api/data.json. And sometimes you might get this error as well, so just remove this tags from here and just run this again, and when it runs successfully, just add this tags back over here. So yeah, we get both of these endpoints, and if you click on any of these endpoints, you're gonna see we get this API endpoint over here. If I say tags, you're gonna get a tags mock API endpoint. And not only the get request, it provides us a lot of other requests as well, like post, put, patch, delete, etc. We can make a post request, and we can add a new post inside of this array of posts over here. So this is an awesome mock API library. So let me just close it up. And now that we have installed our React Query, let's go on and set it up. So inside of our main.jsx, I'll bring in something called query client from React Query, and this will be new query client, and I'm gonna assign it to a variable query client. Now what we are doing over here is we're creating a new instance of our React Query or Tanstack Query, and we will wrap our whole of our app inside of this. So over here, I'm gonna import something called query client provider, and I'm gonna wrap whole of my app inside of this. Let me just close this up, and this will take a client which is going to be this query client over here. Okay, that's all we needed to do to set up our React Query. Now I'm gonna go to app.jsx and make my first API request by using React Query. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say use query. Now use query is a hook provided to us by React Query, and let me show you what it does. So first of all, it takes an object inside of this parenthesis, and it takes a bunch of things. First of all, a query key. So query key is a unique key that you provide to each and every query so that we can identify it uniquely. So for example, for this one, I'm gonna say posts. And the next thing that is going to take is going to be a query function inside of it, where we will make our asynchronous request or where we will fetch our API. So instead of just writing the code over here, I'm gonna create a new folder for api.js. And over here, I'll write all of my logic or all of the helper functions for our API. So let me just quickly bring them in. So this is very basic. Over here, inside of this fetch posts, we're just fetching this endpoint, which I already showed you. And this underscore sort equals minus ID is basically sorting it from in the reverse order so that later on when we add a new post, we can see it at the top. Then we have this fetch tags API call and this add posts API call, which we're gonna worry about later. Right now, we're just only concerned with this fetch posts. So let's just take this fetch posts function and just paste it over here. And let me just import it. So basically, this will fetch all of the posts, return this with a promise and the list of our posts. And this right over here is where the real magic happens. It's gonna give us a bunch of different things. So let me show you. If I press Control space over here, you can see we have data updated at error, failure count, is error, is fetched, is loading, is paused, is pending. We have bunch of different options over here. So let's take the data and is loading. And let me just quickly over here console log this data and is loading. So let's go on back to our browser, open up our inspect. And if I just refresh this, you're gonna see. First of all, the loading was true and data was undefined, still true, still undefined. And as soon as we get the data, loading was false. You see, earlier we had to handle all of these things. We have to create a use state and we have to say loading true, then loading false. That was a very big headache, right? So all of these things come right out of the box. We can have something like is error. We can have error state, what actual error we have. We can have a status. So let me show you the status. So if I say status over here and refresh this, see, initially status was pending, then it was success. So now you might be thinking, how will I know what are all the things that this contain and how they work? So it's simple. Just go to the documentation and let's search for useQuery. And yep, you see, we have the complete documentation with all of the things that you need to know right over here. You can go through this docs, highly recommended, so that you can get more information about it. But as this video moves forward, I'm going to show you more and more features over here. And you know what? I'm going to create a very simple React app over here for fetching all of these posts efficiently. I'm going to show you how the posts are cached, how you can add a post inside that list, how you can add pagination features, etc. So let's go on. I'm just going to quickly remove this code over here and create a new folder for components. Inside of this, I'm gonna have a new file for post list.jsx, and here I'm gonna say RAFCE. And if you don't know how I did that, I have an extension installed over here called ES7 React Redux React Native Snippets, and you can install this as well to make use of those snippets. So yep, I have created this component over here. Let me just import it right below this post list, and let me just import it from /component/post list. Cool. Let me just remove this from here, this as well. If you go back to our browser, you can see post list is right over here. Let's just add a very basic CSS style in our body for font, family, sans serif. This is better. Okay, now inside of the post list, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fetch all of our posts. So I'll say use query. I'm going to say query key posts. And you might be thinking, why is this an array? So let's say there are some things that are dependent on this query function. So for example, if I say query function over here and I call this fetch posts, right? Now, inside this fetch posts, later in this video, I'll show you how you can do pagination as well. So for that, we have to pass the current page, right? To fetch all of the posts from that page. So we have to declare over here that, yeah, page is 1. So that it creates a unique query for that particular page. And this helps React Query for caching the data uniquely for that particular page. So let's not worry about it at this moment. So yeah, okay. And it gives us a few things. I'm going to take data. I'm going to take is error, is loading, and the actual error. And inside of this div, I'm going to first of all have a class name over here. of container, which I'm gonna style it in just a moment. And inside of over here, I'm gonna say if is loading is true, then I'm gonna show a loading indicator. So let's have a p tag for loading, and let's have an is error tag. If the error is there, then I'm gonna show error dot message. Let me just add an optional chaining over here just in case error is not populated. And right below this, I'm gonna render all of our data. So I'll say data dot map, and let's rename this data to post data. So you do that by using this colon, just like this. So post data, I'm gonna take one single post, and I'll say return a div over here. Inside of this div, let's see what do we have inside of our data. We have a title, tags, and ID. Okay, so I'll say post dot title, and also we're supposed to give this a key as well, else it will show us error post dot id. Okay, below this I'm gonna render all of the tags that are related to that particular post. So I'll say post dot tags dot map tag, and I'm gonna have a span tag over here. Inside of this we will render our tag, and let's just give this a key as well of tag. Okay, let's see what do we get. Okay, we're getting the title and we're getting all of the tags over here as well. Awesome. Let's go on and add some bare minimum styles over here. So what I'm doing over here is for our container class, that is this, I'm gonna say some display flex direction column to render it from top to bottom, and some gap. For our post, simple, some display flex, some align items to the center so that they can be aligned at the very center over here. And I haven't given this class, I forgot. So let me just say class name equals post, and now yeah, so we're just giving it some background color, some border radius, and some padding. And same for our tag as well, some background color, some padding, border radius, and margin left to create some spacing between them, just some basic styling. Let's just give this some title as well. So inside of my app.jsx, I'm gonna create a h2 with title of, let's say, my posts, and this will have a class name of title. I'm gonna give this a style as well, which is gonna be some font weight, some font size, text transform, and text align center, some very basic styles. Okay, cool. Then so we have already seen how we can fetch all of the data by using React Query or this useQuery hook over here. Now let me show you a very powerful feature of React Query. So if we go back to the documentation, if we search Devtools, so you see it comes with a React Query Devtools as well. Let me just copy this line and install it, and I'll show you. Let's open a new terminal, paste it over here. Okay, this is installed. Let me just close this up. And now inside of our main.jsx, I'll just import this React Query Devtools. Initial is open equals false. So right below this, let's import it as well from Tanstack/React Query Devtools. And now if I go back to my browser, this is giving us some error, post data is undefined. Okay, so post data, let me just add optional chaining over here, and yeah, everything is fine. Now notice this little circle icon over here. Let me just move myself. So yeah, you see this little circle icon over here. If you click on it, you're gonna see we have this whole Devtools over here. So if we click on this posts query that we've been making up until this point, you're gonna see all of the data that is inside of it. It's gonna show you the current status, if it's a fresh data, if it's a stale data. I'll explain what this stale means. But basically it means that this has cached this data when it has become outdated. We can refetch it from over here, and it's gonna just refetch it right here. And if we refresh this, you're gonna see we get this loading indicator as I showed you earlier. So awesome, we've already seen how we can fetch our data by using React Query. Now let's see how we can change our data, how we can make posts requests by using something called as mutation in React Query. So for doing that, I'm gonna import a hook from React Query called useMutation. But before that, if you're preparing for your front-end interview and you would like me to help you in your front-end interview preparation, just click the link in the description down below and book a one-on-one call with me. We're going to discuss tips, tricks. I'm going to give you a lot of resources. I'm going to design a proper roadmap tailored to your situation, which is going to help you out a lot in your front-end interview preparation. So click the link in the description down below and book a one-on-one call with me. Now inside of over here, this takes an object as well. And inside of that object, just like this query function, we have a mutation function over here. And this takes a function just like fetch posts for making a post request, right? So this was for our get request, and for our post request, I have written this helper function over here. It's just taking this endpoint and it's just making a post request with whatever post that we provide to it. So let's just take this and add it right over here. And then this returns us with a few things like context, data, error, and a lot of things. But what we are concerned about is this mutate function over here. So this mutate function is what we will call to make this post request. So this add post obviously has to be provided this post, right? So we have to call this mutate function with our actual post that we're supposed to add inside of our post request, and this will automatically know that this has to send it over here. Okay, and then this gives us a lot of things like is error and is pending to show that our request is pending right now, our actual error. So since this error is colliding with this error over here, I'm just gonna say is post error, and this error I'm gonna name post error. And I'll also show you something called reset in just a moment. Let me just write it over here so that I don't forget. Okay, now let's create a UI input field where we can type the data and press enter to add this post to our list of posts. So let's create a form over here. And inside this form, I'm gonna have a input field of type text. It's gonna have a placeholder of enter your posts, class name of post box, and name of title, so that we can use this name inside of our form data. And below this, I'm gonna have some checkbox which will show us all of the tags that are inside of our data, right? So I have already created this API for fetching the tags, as I already showed you with the help of JSON server. So I'm gonna take this fetch tags and I'll basically create another query over here. So use query, and this query will be for our tags. So it's, as I already showed you, this will have a query key for tags and query function which will take this fetch tags. Let me just import it. Cool. This will return us with the data, and let's rename this data to tags data. Let's render this tags data over here right below this. So inside of the div called tags, I'll just simply do tags data dot map, and inside this div I'm gonna render an input of type checkbox and a label HTML for tag, which means this label is related to this input field because we have given this ID of tag over here. And obviously we're gonna give this some name which is going to be helpful for our form data. So let's go back and see how this looks. Okay, it's not looking very good. Let's just style it a little bit. But before that, let me just add a button over here for posting as well. So this button will basically say post. Okay, let's just go to app.css and add some styles over here. So inside of the container for the form, I'm just giving it display flex and flex direction column so that everything renders from top to bottom. And for our button as well, I'm just giving some basic styling, some background color and all. For our post box, some padding, font size, border radius, etc. Some border bottom and border none so that we can only see the bottom border so that it looks good. And for our tags, just some display flex and some space around them. So let me see. Okay, this looks very good. We can enter our post over here and click on this post button to post it. Cool, then let's go on and add the logic. So right over here, I'm gonna say on submit, and I'll create a function inside of it called handle submit. Let's create that function over here, handle submit, and this will take an event. And inside of this, I'm gonna get all of our form data. So I'll just say const form data equals new form data. It will take e dot target, and then we have to get this input and all this tags data from inside of it. So const title equals form data dot get, and what's the name of our input? It's title. So I'll just say title over here. And similarly for our tags as well, I'm going to say const tags. I'll say array dot from form data dot keys. So let me show you something why I'm doing this. So over here you can see we have this input field with the name tag. So all of these tags will have different name. So like classic, English, fictions, but we want them all inside of one single array. So to do that, what we're doing over here is I'm saying array.from, which creates an array from an iterable object. So this will create an array from these objects. So I'm taking all of these keys, like all the keys inside of this form data, which will contain these keys as well. And what I'll do, I'll just say simply filter, and I'll take each and every key and I'll say form data dot get key if it is equals to on. So this checkbox has two properties, on and off, right? So if it's on, then obviously this is a checkbox and we want that checkbox which is on. So if we go over here and say console log our title and tags, you're gonna see inside the inspect, if I type anything over here and click on post. Oh, my bad, I forgot to do e.prevent default so that it doesn't refreshes our page. Okay, let's see again. If we type anything and post, yeah, you see we're getting the title and the array of all the tags. Cool. Then here let me just add some null check. If title is not there or tags is not there, just return, else we will call this mutate function over here. Let's see how this works now. So I'll just say, let me just remove this, I'll just say mutate, and inside this will take an object where we will provide both of these. So I'm gonna say title and I'm gonna give this a tag. So I've given this title and tags over here because inside of our API, if you see in our data, we have this exact title and tags. If we haven't given this title, like we would have given this post title, then we would have to do like title :post title. So that's why I just gave it title name, so it's easier for us. And also let's give it some ID, which let's say post data, whatever the post data is, dot length. I'm gonna add 1 to it. That's all. And after this mutate is done, I'm gonna simply do e.target dot reset so that we reset our form. So okay, let's just say new post 1 and let's select something and post it. Nothing happened. It wasn't added to the lists of our posts. Let's see what's going on. If we go to our post request, okay, we get the response. Yep, the post was added. Let's just refresh our page. Okay, the post is here, but why wasn't it updated right away? What's the reason? So it's because of the caching feature of React Query. So let me show you. If we add something again, let's say new post 2, select something over here and post. So see, in the mutations, we have made a mutation over here, but in the post, it shows that this has gone stale. So to refetch it, we need to invalidate this data. And when we invalidate this data, notice over here, if we invalidate this data, yep, you see it fetches this data again and displays it inside of our UI. So how do we do that with our code? So inside of this useMutation, it gives us a bunch of functions like on success, that is after our query has succeeded, it's gonna call this function over here with few things like our data which has been returned, our variables that we provided it, which were these variables over here, and the context which comes from over here. So it has one more function called onMutate. So onMutate runs before this actual mutation happens, and onSuccess runs after the mutation has happened. So this is for making some changes before it. So if we provide something, let's say return ID equals 1 over here, it's gonna go right inside of this context over here. So you can use it according to your use case. So now, as I was saying, on success, what I want to do, I want to invalidate this query over here, this posts query over here. Now inside of this on success, I'm gonna take a query client for which we have to import it from our useQuery client hook. So I'm gonna say useQuery client, and this gives us the access to our query, our React Query's internal API, from where we can use some functions. So I'll say query client equals useQuery client, and we're gonna take this, and over here I'm gonna say dot invalidate queries. Now this takes a few things. First, a query key, which will be posts, because this is the query key that we're going to invalidate, right? So let's see. If we go back to our browser, and if I say new post 4, and let's click on over here and click on post, yep, you see our queries were refetched and updated right over here. Awesome. Now for this query client, as I mentioned earlier, we can have more than one thing inside of this array, right? Like for example, if we have given a page equals 1, we can say comma page to 1, and this will invalidate that particular page over here. If you just give it this posts, then what this will do, it will invalidate every single query with this posts inside of it, with this posts key inside of it. So to avoid that situation, we can do exact to be true, so that it can only invalidate this query which contains only the posts inside of the array. This also takes a predicate key which includes queries matching this predicate function. So what we can simply do over here is we can write a logic. For example, we can have a function here like this. So what this will basically do is it will take the query and it will say query dot query key. First one is posts and the next one is dot page more than 2. So all of the pages more than or equal to 2 will be invalidated. So this is more of some high level stuff. So you can just go on the documentation and have a look at this. It depends on everyone's use cases, so it's not that much frequently used. So now next, let's talk about these functions. So we have on mutate, on success. Similarly, we can have on error function as well. If we want to do something on error, we can have an on settled function over here as well, which will run no matter if our query was succeeded or it failed. So this error, it takes error and variables and contexts, and onSettled takes everything: data, error, variables, context, etc. So let me just comment these out for now so that you can explore them later on. Now this useMutation returned us with these things like is error, is pending and stuff, right? So let me just say they take this is pending and just add over here alongside our is loading, so that when we are making our post request as well, it will show this loading. Apart from that, we need to show error message as well. So let's just duplicate it. I'm gonna say is post error. If that is there, that is this one. I'm gonna take this post error and render it over there. Or you can also say something like unable to post, right? So let's just do something with our API. Let's add some S over here so that we get some error while posting. So let me just write something and click on post. Yep, you see unable to post. Now I want to reset this as well. I want to click it so that I can reset this error. So for that we have something called reset. So I'll take this reset function from here, and on our error over here, let's just say on click, on click, this will call this reset function. And now let me show you. If I click on unable to post, yep, it's gonna reset our error and the state of our app basically. Now these are some of the few functions that I've shown you from useMutation, but there are obviously more functions and variables that it provides to us. So I would highly recommend you to go and read in the docs about it. Now I know one thing that you might be thinking is, what is this stale and caching and this fresh, all of what is going on over here? So let me explain you. So when we fetch a query by using React Query, it marks that query instantly as stale, that this is no longer fresh, and we need to invalidate this query to fetch it again. So let me show you what the role of this stale thing is. So if I just go on to my app.jsx and let's create a button over here, which will say toggle, right? And I'm gonna create a state over here, use state, which will say toggle. By default, it's gonna be false. I mean true. Let's import use state. And over here, when this toggle is true, only then we will show this posts list. Okay, and I'm gonna say on click, set toggle to not toggle, so that it inverts whatever is inside of this toggle. So yep, let me show you. If I just open inspect over here, go to network tab, let me just close this up. Yeah, now see, if I click on toggle, it just unmounts it from our React app. If I click on this again, you're gonna see, we see our posts, but after the API request is made. So after this posts API request is made and this tags API request is made. What if we want this to cache this data? We don't want to fetch the posts again after this toggle is done, right? So what we can simply do, let's say for our whole app, if you want to do this, inside of over here, inside of main.jsx, I'm gonna give this query client some options. Let's say default options. And for all of our queries, inside of our object, I'm going to say queries. Inside of another object, I'm going to say stale time. So let's say if I want it to be cached till 1 minute. So I'm going to say 1000, that is 1 into 60 seconds. So let's see. Now you're going to see if I just clear it up. If I click on toggle and click on toggle again, you're going to see this has not been fetched because these are still fresh. So if I click on over here, you're going to see it shows both of these are fresh over here. But obviously this doesn't make sense for our post, but for our tags, it does make sense because they are not changing forever, right? So, okay. Instead of over here, what I'll do, I'll just go to my posts list, and this useQuery has a key as well, which is stale time. So for our tags, I'm just gonna say infinity. Now you're gonna see if I clear this up, see this became stale and this is still fresh, and this will forever stay fresh. And if I click on toggle and click on toggle again, see the posts was fetched, but the tags was not fetched because we made it fresh all the time. So this will not get stale. Now we have more options over here, which you can add inside of this, or you can add right over here as well for one single query. Like for example, GC time. So GC time. So the time in milliseconds that the unused inactive cache data remains in the memory. So let's say if we have cached some data, if we have added a stale time over here, so if I make this GC time as 0, this will never be cached and it will forever remain stale. And actually there's one more function over here, that is refetch interval. If we provided something, let's say 1000, that is 1000 into 5, let's say. So it will be fetched every 5 seconds. So you see, every 5 seconds, it's gonna make it, like it will invalidate it, and you see, it's fetching it. If you see, you're gonna notice. Yep. You saw it was fetching and then instantly it was stale. So yeah, we don't need this right now. Okay, now let's talk about how we can add pagination inside of our app. So, okay, what I'll simply do, right above these posts data, I'll create a div with pages class name. Inside this, I'm gonna have a button which will say previous page, and another button which will say next page. And between these, I'm gonna have a span tag which will say current page, and it will display the current page basically. Or we can just say page over here, whatever the page is. So yeah, let's create a state for it. And did you notice something? We have built this much of app and we haven't even touched use state or even use effect. So this is the power of useQuery. It comes with all of these features right out of the box. Now we have to maintain our page number somewhere. That's why I'm having this use state over here. So by default, let's keep it 1. Let's import use state and let's see it in our UI. Okay, previous page, 1, next page. Cool. Let's just give this some basic styles. So over here, I'll just say justify content to center and display flex, and just give them some gaps and align items to the center. So yeah. Now what we will do, we will take this page variable and we will provide it to our query. So over here, I'm gonna make this an arrow function and just provide it with this page so that this fetches our page. And as I mentioned earlier, if we are making some change inside of this function over here and we're providing it some outside variable like this page over here, then we're supposed to inform useQuery by giving it inside of this query key. So I'll just say comma page, and this will form a new query because of this. But let's just make some changes inside this fetch post. So it will, what it will basically do, it will take a page, and here I'm just checking if the page is there, then just say underscore page equals page, and per page we're supposed to display 5 items. So all of these are just for JSON server for adding the pagination inside of our app. So yep, let's close this now and let's see. Okay, this is breaking. Why? It's not a function. Okay, let's see the network. Let me just refresh it. Inside of our posts, in the response, oh, okay. So right now we were getting all the arrays, the data inside of in the form of an array. But now we're getting more information, like next page is second, previous page is null right now because we're on the first page, right? Total pages are 7, and then we're getting this data. So all we have to do simply is this post data, when we are rendering it over here, I'm gonna say dot data, and let's just add optional chaining here as well. And now instead of just doing this post data dot length, I'm just gonna post data dot length. Just add a optional chaining here as well. And let's see. Okay, things are looking good right now. And inside of our Devtools, you can see the posts and the page 1. So it will now cache the data with respect to that particular page. And I'll show you when this page changes, you're gonna see the page 2. We're gonna see entirely different query over here cached inside of it. So let's see. So over here inside of our buttons, I'm gonna say simply on click, and here I'll say set page, and I'll take the previous page, or let's say the old page, and I'll say math.max old -1, 0. So when we click, oops, not old, I mean old page. So when we click on this previous page button, it should go to the previous page, right? So I'll say old page -1, but it should not go beyond 0, right? So that's why we are doing math.max. If it goes beyond 0, it will just take 0 over here. And also if there is no previous page, then we're just going to disable this button, right? So I'll say disabled, and I'll just use this. So we have this priv over here, right? So I'll just say post data dot priv. So not post data dot priv. So if it's null, then it's just gonna be disabled. So if I go back, yep, you see we cannot click on it, it's disabled. Now let's take care of our next page button. So similar to this, I'm gonna have an on click over here in this button as well, but there's gonna be a few changes. First of all, I'm not gonna have this math.max and all. I'll just say old page +1, but we're not gonna do this right away. So first of all, let's just add this disabled condition here as well, disabled. And for our next, let me just add optional chaining over here so that this doesn't break. Okay, now let me show you something. If I go back to my browser and if I click on next page, you're gonna see, okay, it's fetching the page, next page, again it's fetching, and see the other pages data is being cached over here. See over here, these pages are being cached, but as soon as I click on previous button, they're gonna be fetched again. We don't want to do that, right? So we want to keep them fresh for some time. So what we can simply do over here inside of our useQuery, I'm gonna simply say stale time, and I'm giving the stale time of 5 minutes. So now you're gonna see, if I clear it up, if I refresh this app, click on next page. Now if I click on previous page, it's not gonna make another API call, even for next page as well. So yep, this is the power of React Query. And there's also a option over here of placeholder data, where you can add this keep previous data function to keep the data of the previous page stored inside of our cache. But I personally feel like this stale time is much more effective because you can customize it according to you. Now, apart from this sort of pagination, you can do infinite scrolling over here as well. Like for example, if I went over here and if I click on load more, it should load more data. If I click on load more again, it should load more data. So that is a very interesting feature of this React query. So what I want you to do is, I want you to go inside of the documentation and try to explore what infinite querying is all about. And it has a hook called useInfinite query, which is similar to useQuery, but more tailored for doing infinite pagination inside of our React app. So if you're able to do it, great. If you're not able to do it, I have uploaded a reel on my Instagram explaining this whole useQuery hook and how you can use that to implement infinite pagination inside of our React app. So open an Instagram app right now and search Roadside Coder and click on this highlight over here, and you're gonna find the reel posted inside of it. Now the next steps for you, we have something called useQueries as well, which enables us for fetching a bunch of different queries together. Like for example, we have IDs, separate IDs over here, and we want to make API calls with respect to each ID, so you can use useQueries. So all of these features particularly depends on your use case and what you're trying to make. So we have bunch of different things over here, and I'm sure what you're looking to do with your APIs or post, get, request, everything you can find inside this library over here. So you can go and explore this documentation. So yep, that is it for this video. And if you want me to make a complete project tutorial by using React Query, just let me know in the comments down below and I will bring in a complete project tutorial on this. And if you like this video, give this video a huge fat thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more such awesome tutorials.